Okay, so today we're on Kuf Amid Bais, page 200 in these Gemaras, and it's the second to the bottom line, Gufa. So, hey, Mazel Tov. That's beautiful, very nice. We're just starting. Kuf. We're doing Kuf Aleph. We're holding right now at Kuf, the bottom, second to the bottom line. The term Gufa is usually used when you're quoting a Amirayim. Amar Mar is usually a Brisa. Gufa is usually when you're quoting Amiram. Here, the Gufa is being used to quote a Brisa, so it's not perfect. This Gufa. It was taught before that ha'eichel gid hanasha shel behema tameya. If someone eats a gid hanasha of a non-kosher animal, a camel or something, or a pig, Rabbi Yehuda mechayev shtayim. Rabbi Yehuda says that you chayev two lashes. And Reb Shimon pater. Reb Shimon says you pater.
Potter from two or potter from one?
Both. Potter from both. The Gemara asks immediately. We're right on top of Kuf Aleph on that. Reb Shimon Manavshach. Reb Shimon Manavshach is, let's see how they translate it here. Either way, it's the exact translation from Manavshach. What is your desire? Okay, that doesn't tell me the full story.
What's the difference?
No, the manavshach is you can't have both ways. Which way do you want to choose? That's what it means. What is your desire? You have to pick one of them. So Reb Shimon says you're exempt from both punishments. Usually you're exempt from both because you can't have one isser being imposed upon another isser. If it's already forbidden, then it's forbidden from before. But you have to have one. So that's the manavshach. Manavshach is which one do you want? But you can't take both and get rid of both at the same time. So, I isser chalal isser, if he holds that you can impose one isser on top of another isser to stack it on top, and you chayev twice, chayev nami mishum gid. You should be chayev also for the gid anasha. First of all, it's pig or camel or something. It's not kosher. And second of all, you ate the gid from it. If you hold that you can't impose one on top of another, to superimpose one on top of another, so l'chayev mishum tuma dekadim, you should be chayev for the first one that came first, the tuma. It was impure. It was a non-kosher animal. So we have a solution here. The ein begidim b'naisin tam. Let's say there's no flavor to the gid, so that's like eating the hoof of a non-kosher animal, which is not really prohibited. So let's say, okay, so it's not really prohibited, the gid, because if as a non-kosher animal, because it has no flavor. So if that's the case, l'chayev mishum gid. The Torah says you're chayev,
If it has no flavor,
even if it has no. A non-kosher animal, the prohibition's only on the flesh. On the bones, it's not. Remember, we had this question, something called lanolin. Lanolin is a product that's made from the hair of the goats or something. I don't know.
I remember that.
Anyway, there was we're discussing, is it a kosher? Was it hair from a kosher animal or not? And even if it was it you're just allowed to pull a hair off? And it's not an edible product. This is really the gelatin machlekes. We're using bones to make gelatin, and because the Torah only forbids the meat, only the edible products, the bones were never forbidden. But now we take the bones and we make it edible by making it gelatin. So we're making a product out of it, an edible product. So is it possible for the prohibition to be like lingering over it until it becomes edible, and now the prohibition is there? Do we say no? It was never forbidden. And the leniencies, you can imagine, we're saying that it was never forbidden. And the strict ones were saying, no, it's what? You're going to use pig, it's edible now. So that was a big machlekes, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. Okay, so
The maskana to date is
it
because I
depends-
see it says fish gelatin
yeah,
when
depends which hechsher you go by. I bet there's hechsherim that are using the lenient opinions in gelatin. There were valid opinions. It was real
from
strict.
the bone gelatin.
The bone gelatin.
But the better hechsherim all say fish gelatin
Probably.
or something like that, which there's no shiloh on, right?
So right. So now ein begidin b'nais and tam. Let's say that it's not edible. That the gid is not an edible product. So as a non-kosher animal, it's perfectly permitted. So there was no prohibition there. So okay, so Reb Shimon holds you don't get malchus for eating the gid from a non-kosher animal. Okay, why? Because has no flavor. It was never forbidden. It's not an edible product. But if that's the case, then it should be usher because it's the gid anasher. Because you can't stack one isser on top of another isser. But here there was no original isser. L'chayv mishum gid, yishachayv because of the gid. And the gid, even if it's not edible, is usher. Because the Torah clearly says you can't eat it. Even if it's a piece of wood, you can't eat it. So you should get malchus for that. So what we're doing here is we're questioning Reb Shimon's opinion that says that there's no malchus for eating a gid from a non-kosher animal. Amar Rava. Rava says, Leilam Kasava, really, Reb Shimon holds, Ein Megidim B'nais and Tam. There's no flavor. If that's the case, it should be a gid anasha. It should be also because of a gid anasha. If it's not prohibited because of a non-kosher animal, so we only have one prohibition here, which that should stick, and that's the prohibition of a gid anasha. Rava says, V'shani hasam damakra. Here it's different. The pasuk says, Al kain la yochlu b'nei Yisrael es gid anasha. Therefore, the Jewish people should not eat the gid anasha. What are we trying to say? Trying to say that the animal you can eat, and the gid anasha you can't eat. Misha gida yasser b'sari mutter. We're looking for an animal that you can eat the rest of it, but not the gid. Yatzasazu, this excludes a non-kosher animal. Shagida yasser b'sara yasser. That the gid is asr and the flesh is asr. So Reb Shimon says, nothing to do with Isser Chalal Isser. You see, we were so caught up with Isser Chalal Isser. Can you stack one prohibition on top of another one? That we will every time a person would say you're exempt, we're thinking, oh, it's because of Isser Chalal Isser. It's not the case. The case is here. The reason here is because we have a pasuk that alludes to the fact that the rest of the animal needs to be kosher for there to be a prohibition of gid anasha. If it's a non-kosher animal, the rest of the animal is not kosher, and therefore there's no prohibition of gid anasha. Nothing to do with Isser Chalal Isser. Okay.
I'm sorry, but just because it's early, I'm having my second cup of coffee. Could you redefine Isra Chalal Isra? Because even with insurance, when they talk about stackable, I never really understand.
An easy example is like this. Let's say Yom Kippur is on Shabbos. So, and someone does work. Does he get the prohibition? Does he get lashes twice, or does he have to bring 2 chatais if he does it by mistake, or okay, those are 2 prohibitions that are coming together. Let's say
that would be Isra Chalal Isra.
Yeah, but those possibly are simultaneous, so that's a little easier. Let's say someone on Yom Kippur eats the forbidden fats of an animal. So those forbidden fats were forbidden beforehand. Now comes along Yom Kippur. Is it prohibited to eat? Does Yom Kippur add onto that? Do you now have another prohibition because you ate the forbidden fats on Yom Kippur? Do you get the prohibition twice?
Why doesn't Kamlei the Rabbi mean fall out here?
Well,
Because
Kamlei
say
if it would be one severe punishment in one.
But here,
let's say it's the same punishment. Yeah.
Right, that's what threw me.
So here we have the prohibition of the gid hanasha, and we have an animal that's not kosher. So do we say that the gid hanasha is imposed on top of the fact that it's a non-kosher animal, and now it's two prohibitions? So we said that Reb Yehuda says yes, and Reb Shimon said no. But we concluded that Reb Shimon has nothing to do with Isser Chalal Isser. He says no because the pasuk alludes to the fact that should be, the animal should be kosher, then the gid is prohibited. Rav Yudah Rav. You see, so far we were talking about a non-kosher species of animals, and we're looking at the gid hanasha, and we're wondering, is this going to be aser? Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Ha'eichel gid hanasha shel nevela. If someone eats a gid hanasha of nevela, is an animal that died, a kosher animal that died without shechita. This is a little different. Here we have a kosher animal. It just wasn't shechted. So it's also prohibited to eat. Reb Meir mechayev shtayim. Reb Meir says you chayev two. Chachamim ena chayev ala achas. Chachamim say you only chayev one. Umaydim chachamim l'Reb Meir. However, the chachamim will agree to Reb Meir. Ba'eichel gid hanasha shel oila v'shel shara niskal shechayev shtayim. Let's say we have an animal that's a sacrifice. Sacrifice, you're not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to have benefit from the sacrifice. Or let's say there's an animal an ox that gored a man and killed a man. So the rule is that it's taken to court and the ox is killed. The owner's taken to court with the ox, and the ox is killed. So you're not allowed to have any benefit from this ox. It's called the shara niskal. So if someone eats the shara niskal, that's a prohibition. If someone eats the gid hanasha from the shara niskal, so now it's a double prohibition. And the sages that usually said that a non-shechted animal, which was prohibited to eat, if someone eats the gid hanasha from it, there's only one prohibition there, will agree that if someone eats the gid hanasha from a sacrifice or from a shara niskal, that there's two prohibitions there. Now, let me just go through outside, just some logic over here. There's some you have the wrong one. Do you want to use the Hebrew? There are some exceptions to the rule of Isser Chalal Isser. We already saw one before. We said we said that the gid hanasha was already prohibited to the Bnei Noach, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda holds that it will be. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that the gid hanasha is prohibited in a non-kosher animal. And what was his reason? It was already non-kosher before. And the gid, we said, only forms after the embryo, after the flesh is formed. We said that. And so therefore, we have which prohibition came first was the non-kosher status came first. So we said that nevertheless, the gid hanasha will be imposed on top of this, second to the original prohibition, because it has a certain stringency. And that stringency is that it was applicable even before the Torah was given to the Bnei Noach, to the sons of Yaakov. Okay, so we already know that. There's two possible exemptions to Isser Chalal Isser. So you can't stack one Isser on top of another, but there's two exceptions to that. One is called Isser Koilo. Isser Koilo. Koilo.
Inclusive?
It's inclusive. So let's say.
Chaf lamed lamed.
Yeah, Chavav lamed lamed. Let's say the case of nevela. I have a kosher animal that has a gid hanasha in it. The gid hanasha is prohibited. Instead of shechting it, it gets killed. Now, it's not just the gid hanasha is forbidden, but all the meat is forbidden. So because the prohibition is applied to all the meat, it extends over to the gid as well. So it's called migu dechal, just as it applies to to the meat, it also extends to that. That's called Isser Koil. So some people would say, some opinions would hold, that even though I can't say Isser Chalal Isser, that one prohibition goes on top of another one, but by Isser Koil I do say that. Isser Koil means it's more inclusive. Because you're getting the whole animal prohibited now, so it will include also the gid. Okay. Then there's another possibility of Isser Chalal Isser that it will be taking effect, and that is called Isser Moisef. Sometimes the Gemara calls it Isser Chamer. Maybe two separate things, maybe the same. But Moisef means like this, that let's say the gid was Asr before, but now it's not just Asr. Now it becomes Asr Bahana. For example, now it's a sacrifice. Or now it's an ox that gored and killed a man, which is Asr Bahana, it's a Shar Niskal. So because I have to apply to it the prohibition of benefit, you can't have benefit, I can't use it now as some sort of tie for something, I also apply to it the prohibition that I'm not allowed to eat it. I wasn't allowed to eat it anyway, but because I added on an extra prohibition onto it, the original prohibition of not eating it is also applied. Not the original prohibition. The second prohibition of not eating it is also applied. Okay, so that's Isser Koilal is when you include more material into the prohibition, more meat, or some more people possibly are sometimes it's forbidden relations could be if the person gets married, then not just is it a close relative, but it's also everyone is prohibited now because the woman got married or something. It could be the woman was a close relative, let's say. You couldn't marry her. Now she's married, so now no one can marry her except, right? So we've just increased the amount of people. The prohibition, who the prohibition would be, the restriction, who it should be on. So then we could say yes, a chalal lesser in certain cases. Okay, so here we had a case of a gidanasha of nevela. Reb Meir says you're chayiv too. However, the sages said that you're only chayiv one. That means there's no prohibition of nevela on this. The gid came first. However, if it's a sharaniskal, if there is a,
Wait, they still can't eat the nevela.
Still can't eat it, right?
It's just they don't get the
Right.
addition.
It's not considered that the nevela is imposed on the gid anasha as well. However, if it's a sharaniskal, if it's forbidden to have benefit from it, then they agree that there's two prohibitions. The Gemara asks like this: Man haitana, who is the opinion? Who is the early source? To be Isser Koilel, that when I have an Isser Koilel, Isser Chalal Isser Lesley. Lesley means there is not. He doesn't hold of Isser Chalal Isser. He puts the there is in the sentence. The there is not is at the end of the sentence. In English, we would have written, who's the opinion that does not hold of by Isser Koilel Isser Chalal Isser? However, Isser Koilel be Isser Chomer Isley. But when I have a more stricter prohibition, he does hold of it, which is by the Sharaniskal. So who's the one that doesn't hold of the same prohibition, just larger in size, is not effective, but if it's more strict, it is effective. Amar Rava says Rabbi Yesi Aglili. It's Rabbi Yesi Aglili. Okay, now, we're not going to get a full proof that it's Rabbi Yesi Aglili. We're just going to get half of this. We're going to see that Rabbi Yesi Aglili holds that we don't say Isser Chalal Isser by Isser Koilel. Isser Koilel means that there's more things that are included in the prohibition. Unless it's stricter, that we're not going to see from here. And that's really what we're looking for, but we're going to be satisfied with just half of it. Ditnan, as it was taught in the Mishnah. Tamei she'achal kodesh. Someone that's impure, that eats something holy, a sacrifice, sacrificial meat or something. And he wasn't allowed to, he was tamei. And it's a very strict punishment, it's kares. If someone is impure, his body is impure and he eats meat that's holy. The first opinion here says, bein kodesh tamei, bein kodesh tar is both chayiv. regardless of what the status of the meat was, whether the meat was pure, whether the meat was impure. If the person is impure, he's chayiv. Rabbi Eily says, Tami she'achal esatar is chayiv. We have to look at the meat. This meat was pure. He's tamei. That's a real prohibition. Tami she'achal esatame, but if the meat was impure as well, then he's pater. Shelo yachal el davar tamei, he ate something that was tamei. What Rabbi Eily is saying is that, look, there was an original prohibition here. That original prohibition was you're not allowed to eat sacrificial meat that's impure. For that, there's no kares. But let's ignore the punishment for now. What Rabbi Eily is saying is the fact that he's impure cannot be added on to the prohibition here. This was already prohibited from beforehand. Amrulai, the sages said to him, Af tami shachal esatar. Every impure person that eats pure sacrificial meat, kivan shenaga by tameyo. Once you touch it, you make it tamei. How is there ever a possibility of a impure person eating pure meat? It's always tamei. So therefore, whatever the prohibition is, whatever the punishment is, of an impure person eating sacrificial meat, that has to be whether the meat was tahar or tamei, because it's always tamei. So
to him,
as soon as he eats it, it's got to become tamei. The Gemara asks, "Shapri kamei Rabbanan Rabbi Eily." The Rabbanan have a good point. Shapri means it's good, it's beautiful, it's correct. The word Shapiro either comes from that or it comes from Speyer. It was a city in Germany. The name Shapiro, either because Shapir is beautiful or something, or it comes from the city. I don't know. They would probably like to say that it's. I don't know. Okay, so the Rabbanan have a good claim to Rabbi Eily that every time an impure person eats meat, it's going to become impure, and nevertheless, he gets the punishment of an impure person eating sacrificial meat. V'amar Rava, so Rava explained. If the person was impure, and then the meat becomes impure, everyone doesn't argue that he's obligated. The Sakaris Kadim, because he was impure first, and an impure person is not allowed to eat sacrificial meat, and that came first. Ki pligi, where is the machlokes? Ki is when is the machlokes? If the meat was impure, and then the person became impure, Rabbanan islu iser kaila. The Rabbanan hold that, look, originally there was one piece of meat that this person couldn't eat. This piece of impure meat, that's it, one piece of meat. Then this person becomes impure. Now, how much meat can this person not eat? All sacrificial meat. So we've just added into his prohibition all the meat all the sacrificial meat. So the Rabbanan hold, because we're increasing the size of the prohibition, that now he's not allowed to eat not just this piece of meat, which was prohibited from before, but all sacrificial meat he's not allowed to eat. So just as the other meat he's not allowed to eat, so too this meat he's not allowed to eat. So we imposed, on top of the original prohibition, we imposed his prohibition of tumas haguf, that he's impure. The migu de mechayev achatichas tires, migu means since, or just as he's chayev for the pure pieces of meat, because now we became tamid de alma, which are in the world. Mechayev na mechatichas tameya. He's chayev also on achaticha tameya, on this individual piece of meat that's tamei now. Okay. For Rabbi Haglili lesla yisur koilon. Rabbi Haglili doesn't hold a yisur koilon. The migula yamrin, and he doesn't say just as. He says yes, it's true that the other pieces of meat that are sacrificial meat that are pure, this fellow is not allowed to eat. But this piece of meat, he wasn't allowed to eat anyway. So the prohibition isn't imposed on him. Okay, so let me just say this outside, just to clarify. Let's say we have one piece of meat. Let's say this piece of meat here. is impure. Okay? So I'm the person that's going to eat it. I'm prohibited to eat it. Okay? Now I become impure. So I'm not allowed to eat this meat or this meat. This is other meats here that are pure. These are pure, but they're sacrificial meats. So now I'm not allowed to eat this meat from before, and I'm not allowed to eat these meats either, because I'm impure and I'm not allowed to eat sacrificial meat. So the rabbis say, migu, just as this new prohibition that an impure person is not allowed to eat sacrificial meat is placed on these meats, just as so too it's placed on this one as well. So now there's two reasons why I can't eat that piece of meat. The Rabbi Eily says no. Rabbi Eily says this one was prohibited from before. These I'm not allowed to eat from right now. And I don't say just as. So therefore, this is prohibited with this new prohibition, but this is prohibited from the old prohibition. This doesn't have two prohibitions on it. So now we found that Rabbi Eily is of the opinion that even though the new prohibition, which is I'm impure, I'm not allowed to eat these meats as well, that's considered an Isser Kailo. Even though this new prohibition has more, it increases the size, and nevertheless, even though the size increases, it doesn't get imposed on this. So Rabbi Eily holds that I don't say Isser Halal Isser by an Isser Kailo. Now let's go back to the Gid HaNashe. So the Gid HaNashe was in an animal that wasn't shechted. So the Gid HaNashe was prohibited. Before anything happened, the Gid HaNashe was prohibited. Then the animal died, was shot, it died. So now there's more meat here that's prohibited to be eaten. So Rabbi Eily would say that I don't say just as, which means that the Gid HaNashe was prohibited from before. Now I have more meat that's prohibited to be eaten. I don't say just as this other meat is prohibited to be eaten, so too will imply that new prohibition of nevela onto the Gid HaNashe as well. Rabbi Eily would not say that, because he doesn't say Yisur Kailo. So now we found who's the opinion. Just like Rabbi Eily says, I don't say Yisur Kailo by the impure person, that it increases the size of the prohibition and it doesn't get imposed upon the original thing that was prohibited. So too it's Rabbi Eily that would say that the Issa Nevela doesn't get imposed on the Gid HaNashe. Okay. The Gemara now asks, Rabbi Eily, Nihi means like although, accepted the Isser Kailo Lesley, I understand he doesn't have the Isser Kailo, the Isser Kal, Yava Yisser Chamar, Yava Isser Kal. When we're talking about the impure person that's going to eat sacrificial meat, the prohibition of eating impure meat is not as strict as an impure person eating sacrificial meat. Notice, if the meat is impure, there's a negative prohibition to eat it. But if the person has an impurity on his body, and he goes ahead and he eats it, then it's Isser Kares. It's much stricter. So now, Rabbi Eily, we said, we don't say Isser Kailo. We ignored the prohibition. The Gemara is getting back to this and says, 1 second, you ignored a major point here. We ignored the punishment of that prohibition. You're forgetting a major point. This prohibition is much stricter. The punishment is much stricter. Why does Rabbi Eily not say that there's an Isser Kares on this new prohibition? Now he's impure, and there's more meat that's prohibited to him that should for sure be imposed on the original prohibition of the impure meat. Isser Kal was the impure meat. Yava Yisser Chamar, let the stricter prohibition Yachal al Isser Kal and fall on the lighter prohibition. What is the stricter prohibition? Tumas Haguf. Straight Tumas Haguf b'kares. Tumas Haguf has kares. And this is just a negative prohibition of lashes. Ravashi says, this is a very interesting answer. I don't know if we'll accept it. But Man leimalanda Tumas Haguf chamura. Who tells you that the Tumas Haguf is really stricter? Dilma Tumas Basar chamura. There's a stringency in the impure meat. In that original prohibition that's strict. Why? The lesle tara b'mikveh. A person can go to the mikveh and become pure. So the prohibition that the person has is temporary.
Right.
He goes to the mikveh and the prohibition goes off.
Go through the turnstile.
But the
Finished.
but the prohibition on that meat is permanent. That meat can never become pure. You can put the meat in the mikveh, it doesn't become pure.
Oh.
Food can't become pure in a mikveh. Vessels and people can. Reusable things can be. This is, what do you call it when it's
Disposable?
no, not disposable. It's
Recyclable.
with energy. Renewable.
Renewable energy?
What's the other one? When it's it just gets used up and it's lost.
Non-renewable.
Non-renewable. Non-renewables can't get.
Unsavable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's much more stricter.
Wow.
So therefore, we're not going to impose the second one on top, according to Rabbi Eily.
That's neat. But you don't hold by him.
No, I don't know. I'm saying I don't know if we'll logically accept it because Isser Karis is saying Isser Karis is not as strict because it's temporary. I don't know. Okay, the Gemara seems to accept it.
Wait, Karis is
His excision, his soul gets cut off. He
right,
dies young.
It's non-renewable.
No.
But he could overcome that by going to the mikveh.
If he goes to the mikveh, then if he eats that meat afterwards, it's fine.
Yeah. Wow.
But there's no way of ever eating it. The Gemara asks now, Rabbi Eily, Leslie Yisr Kailal. Rabbi Eily doesn't hold of Yisr Kailal. Notice again, we were looking for the source that the Gid Hanasha, that the Gid Hanasha doesn't have two prohibitions when it's inside an animal that wasn't slaughtered. So we said that whoever holds that isn't going to hold of Yisr Kailal, because the animal that wasn't slaughtered, the whole animal becomes not kosher. And nevertheless, that prohibition is not imposed on the Gid Hanasha itself. So we're using this example of Tumah, where all types of sacrificial meat are prohibited to eat by this person, and nevertheless that prohibition is not imposed on the one piece of meat that was impure from before. We think that's comparable. Now we said that's Rabbi Eily's opinion. Now Rabbi Eily doesn't hold of Isser Kailal, the Gemara asks. V'hatanya, it's taught in a Braisa. Shabbos v'yom Kippurim, Shabbos in Yom Kippur. Shagag v'asa malacha. Minayin shechayav al zeh ba'atzmei al zeh ba'atzmei. It happened to be that year that Shabbos fell on the 10th of Tishrei. So Shabbos in Yom Kippur. And he does a malacha and he forgets it's Shabbos, he forgets it's Yom Kippur, or he forgets it's prohibited.